Hi everyone, here to share with you the next part of our book, Runaway Ralph. We're on chapter 4, and up until now, we've met really quite a few characters. Remember, Ralph has run away from the Mountain View Inn, and he took a journey and he was trying to find the camp, and he did find the camp. He met a dog, a gopher, there was a cat, and then most recently, um, there's the boy Garth. And you might remember that Garth is from the beginning of the book. Garth was at the Mountain View Inn. And now Ralph has met Garth again. Garth captured Ralph in a butterfly net. And last time I left off, Ralph was in a cage. And he's thinking, okay, Garth is going to come back. He'll let me out of the cage, and I can go get my motorcycle again. Chapter 4 is called Chum. Not quite sure what that means yet. Here's the beginning of chapter 4. When Ralph awoke, the camp was dark. Crickets chirped in the weeds outside the craft shop. In the distance, frogs croaked. In the distance, frogs croaked, were suddenly silent, and croaked again. Timidly, Ralph began to investigate his new home. Someone had supplied him with food and water. A piece of paper had been dropped thoughtfully into one corner. Knowing that he was safe from the cat, Ralph nibbled at some dried corn and a lettuce leaf until his stomach was full. Then he shredded the paper, which was somewhat harder to chew than the Kleenex he had enjoyed at the Mountain View Inn, and spread it around his cage before he summoned enough courage to explore his exercise wheel. Ralph climbed cautiously onto the wheel, which swung back and forth so alarmingly that he jumped off. He ran around his cage, examining the wheel from every angle. Deciding that the worst that could happen to him was falling off, Ralph tried again. This time he stayed on the wheel, and when he became accustomed to the swinging motion, he tried a few cautious steps. The wheel spun pleasantly beneath his feet. Ralph ran faster. The wheel increased its speed. Ralph raced as hard as he could run and then stopped. To his astonishment, the wheel continued to spin, and Ralph was carried completely around the circle, so that for an instant, before he began his descent, he was upside down at the top of the wheel. This ride was fun. When Ralph had coasted to a stop, he began to run again so that he could spin around the full circle once more. Round and round went Ralph as the shadows in the craft shop faded. Spinning on a wheel was as dangerous and as exciting as riding a motorcycle. His motorcycle! Ralph leaped from the wheel to the side of the cage nearest the window. The rays of the rising sun slanted through the bamboo, but no matter how hard Ralph strained his eyes, he could not catch even a glimpse of chrome or red metal. If only he had some way of knowing his motorcycle was still hidden beneath the bamboo husk. An alarm clock went off in a lodge nearby, and a boy in rumpled pajamas stumbled out to blow the rousing bugle notes that brought the camp to life. Ralph busied himself scattering his shredded paper about his cage, nibbling his food, and racing on his wheel. While the campers were in the dining hall eating breakfast, Garth slipped into the craft shop, checked on Ralph's food and water, and slipped out again so quickly that Ralph only had begun to summon his courage to speak. That's funny, Ralph thought. The boy acts as if he's doing something wrong. After breakfast, Aunt Jill and several boys and girls straggled into the craft shop and settled down to make pictures by gluing dried rice, peas, beans, and corn to scraps of plywood. Mosaics, they called them. Such a waste of good food, thought Ralph. recalling some of the hard times he had gone through with his family at the mountain back at the Mountain View Inn. Those campers were ruining enough food to keep a mouse family healthy for weeks. Here's an illustration of Ralph on his exercise wheel. Before long, the mosaic makers discovered Ralph, who obliged them by racing on his wheel. "Hey, look at him loop the loop," said a boy named Pete. "Isn't he darling?" cried a girl. Apparently all girls liked mice, at least mice in cages. Darling. Ralph could not resist showing off by looping the loop once more, and when many hands pushed bits of the mosaics into his cage, he nibbled greedily. At least there was no scrounging at Happy Acres Camp. The next time Garth slipped into the craft shop while everyone else was in the dining hall, Ralph gathered his courage to speak. Say, he began in a timid voice, but the boy must not have heard, because at that moment he began to sing uncertainly to himself. Little Rabbit Frou Frou, hopping through the forest, scooping up the field mice and banging them on the head. Ralph was stunned by the words Garth sang. What kind of boy would sing such a wicked song? Certainly not a boy a mouse could trust. Frightened and disappointed, he scuttled to the farthest corner of his cage and turned his back. Down came the good fairy, and she said, "Little Rabbit Frou Frou, I don't want you hopping through the forest, scooping up the field mice and banging them on the head." As Ralph sat trembling in his corner, he listened and was puzzled. Garth, with obvious pleasure, was singing the same words the campers were singing in the dining hall, but the tune was different. When their voices went up, Garth's went down. When their voices went down, Garth's went up. Sometimes his voice did neither, but wavered someplace in the middle. Ralph was bitterly disappointed by the whole turn of events. Garth was not interested in speed and motorcycles. He was interested in singing and banging field mice on the head. The hot summer days droned on. Ralph was supplied with more food than he could possibly eat, and his exercise wheel kept him in trim. Whenever Catso sneaked into the craft shop and showed an interest in Ralph's cage, someone snatched him and shoved him out the door. So we're going to stop there, everybody. I did want to ask you about one word that I read earlier. The word is puzzled. As Ralph sat trembling in his corner, he listened and was puzzled. This is when he's listening to Garth sing that song. He's puzzled. I know you know the word puzzle. A puzzle is like a game that you put together. But there's a verb, an action word, to be puzzled. What do you think it means to be puzzled? We'll talk about it next time. Bye for now.